position to evaluate. Now, I know Chuni has seen this game, and he really likes this one, and I kind of do too. I was playing a good friend of mine in a rapid tournament, and I had white. And I played, of course, some dubious chess and reached this position, which we are going to evaluate presently. It's white to play. What is the evaluation? We have to balance all those factors again. King safety, piece activity, and material. Pawn structure is a secondary concern. It's kind of an aspect of piece activity and king safety, in my opinion. Okay, Obama ate my change is back in action. Welcome back, and he says that it looks like white is worse. And why do you think white is worse? Which of the factors are bad for white? All right, so Nerf Russians is claiming equality. He says white has activity and king safety, and black has material. That sounds level-headed. I'm still curious to see why Obama ate my change thinks white is worse. And maybe Chuniflow's opinion will be welcome as well, although he has seen the game. It could maybe influence his opinion. Probably, if you think white is worse, it's because you value those pawns that they kissed goodbye more highly than the fact that their bishops have active prospects and their knight has good squares, things like that. That Zamora person's back. Welcome back. Radinade has something nice to say. Thank you very much. Okay, so in this position, it is certainly kind of equal. And I played bishop d4. The reason I think it's equal is like what I said. These bishops are pretty good. Actually, all the minor pieces are good. This rook has an open file. This rook also has an open file and maybe a choice of files later on. So there are lots of good places for the rooks. It's sort of like a promise of counterplay to come. So even though we're down pawns, we should be able to drum up some kind of a storm. Also, this bishop is god-awful. I think this is something important to acknowledge. It would take them several moves to make this bishop better. And in the meantime, several moves in a row in chess is pretty valuable. Usually a plan that takes more than 2 moves is not going to succeed. So certainly there are going to be some issues coming up. Nicholas Dace, thank you for tuning in. Welcome. I enjoyed our game that we played some time ago. It was a very interesting game, especially with the commentary going on during the game from interesting passersby. All right, so why did I choose bishop d4 over bishop g3? Good question. So bishop d4 is, if I get to keep the bishop here, I'm aiming at the future home of their king. They have to either keep it in the center or castle kingside. And I don't think keeping it in the center is really an interesting option. So actually, I would like to show the example of the game where I played against Nicholas Thies maybe next, because it was very interesting, and I'd like his feedback about that. It's been a while since I looked at it, though. Anyway, so if I play bishop g3, this is probably not aiming for squares that are as critical, although it's probably also a good placement. I also was kind of counting on tricking my opponent into playing this active move, so bishop c5 looks very good because you are doing a cross pin. It feels nice to do this kind of tactical thing. But this bishop is actually the better of Black's two bishops. So exchanging it off only benefits white. But this position is probably still equal until they castled. So this position is white to play and get a spectacular position. Any suggestions? Now it's time for some calculation, but it's also still predicated on the things that I mentioned before, that white's activity is much greater. All right, so Nicholas Stace thinks that black should be better because of bishop c5. Obama 8 might change says rook f6 with zero calculation. Do you think you can make that kind of decision on intuition alone? Obama 8 might change? You might be right. Black's dark squares certainly are weak without that bishop. I do agree, Nicholas. Well, the move that I played in the game was rook takes f6. And the game took a turn for the very interesting because he had to play e5. This move makes a lot of sense because it's activating this bad bishop. We're trying to get it involved. But it's sad to not be able to take the rook. But with a little bit of calculation, what's wrong with pawn takes f6? Yeah, I think probably knight d5 was a better choice. Let's actually go back and look at that briefly. Yeah, knight d5 here. This permits knight e4, and I think that there's probably considerable counterplay if you try queen e3. So knight d6 and knight takes f7. So the position is still interesting after knight d5. But let's go back to this one just because I was asking about it. What's wrong with pawn takes f6? Yeah, knight e4. That's right. Not queen takes h6. Um, if you try queen h6, I believe queen takes c3 is good because you're guarding f6, you're threatening the back rank, you're taking a free piece, and if they try rook b3, it just illustrates the idea. That's a mate. Does white have counterplay here? I think if you play bishop d3, then f5 should stop the counterplay, especially because you don't even have a draw now. I think queen g7 stops that. Maybe you could play for a draw here somehow. No, I don't think so. But anyway, knight e4 was my intention. This is the much stronger move. And the idea is that if they play a move like queen e5, guarding the square, then we play queen takes h6. And queen takes e4 is met by bishop d3, skewering the queen and the mating square. All right, so Nicholas Thies says maybe knight d5 instead of castling, but then he says queen e7, c4 after knight e4. All right, so this was here. He said queen e7, c4. Yeah, and the knight doesn't get to stay. That's definitely an issue. Black just is not that active. That's a long-term problem. And this stems directly from the evaluation of the position, right? We can kind of see the future promise of these kinds of opportunities for white because we evaluated the position this way. That white is at least equal because of these dynamic moves. So we immediately start seeking these moves after making the evaluation.